Friends, it is Wednesday and it is Ask a Flower Farmer. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and thanks so much for dropping in. What this is all about is for about 30 minutes on Wednesdays, we host Ask a Flower Farmer, and sometimes it's my friends, peers, and then today it's me. So if you have questions about anything to do with flower farming, growing cut flowers, seed starting, cool flowers, flower farming business, I'll do my best to try to answer it for you. You just post it down in the bubble below with the question mark in it. That way I don't lose your question as names are flying by, right? So post your questions there. So while we're getting some questions revved up, this is a big cool flower season. We have a grow room full of cool flowers that are being planted in our window of very early spring, which is February 14th to about March 1st. So we have stuff up and running, getting all prepared to do that. And we've also done some restarting. And so even though, friends, I'm the one that wrote the book, we still have some failures, right? And so post your questions about cool flowers, all of that in the bubble with the question mark. And while we're waiting for some questions, I wanted to show y'all something. So I guess probably many of you are familiar with my book, which is this, the Cut Flower Handbook, which is a beautiful hardback book that has everything that you need to start, maintain, and grow a cut flower garden, whether you're a home gardener or a flower farmer. Well, we have a set that we have sold, this is the #1 seed collection that we have sold for years. It's got 6 packs of seeds and a plan, and just for the perfect little 3x10 cutting garden. And then this is the PDF download that when you buy the book from us, you get 6 additional flowers that didn't quite make the book. And you get that from the QR code that's on the bookmark. But here's the special part, y'all. We, for Valentine's, are selling this set, and when it comes to you, it's going to be wrapped like this. And today's the last day to buy this, by the way, with this set. Today, February 5th. And so inside this package is all of these things that I just showed you. And it comes to you with a ribbon and a tag, and it's just ready to roll. So it costs $47.95, which is about $5 less than buying the book and the seed collection separately. Plus, it's gift wrapped. So I just don't want anybody to not know about this. If you comment shop, that gives you a DM to my website. Just go to the book category, and that will, right at the top of the books, this is the first one pictured. If it's no longer pictured there, it means we're sold out. But I just didn't want you guys to actually miss out on that, because I don't know about y'all, but I am the worst gift giver on the planet, and I happen to be married to the best gift giver. I mean, he even gives me a New Year's Eve gift, which I still don't remember to get him one. It's only been almost 30 years, y'all. So remember, if you have questions, you need to post it in the bubble with the question mark so I don't lose your question as names are swimming past. And then the second thing, I wanted to invite you to the live shopping show this Friday. This Friday is tool time, y'all. Talking about my favorite tools, those go-to things. And in case you don't know, that's kind of what our whole business is about, right? My business grew out of me selling and offering to you the same stuff that I use, the same seeds that I grow from, the same tools that I use. We don't offer a bunch, but it's just the stuff that we find really, really useful. And so please join me. And if you don't have my phone app to join the live shopping show, you can get it. You can comment app here and we'll DM you the link, or you can just go to your phone's app store and search Gardener's Workshop, and it is the Shop app. We have 2. The Learn app is where my community is and all of our online courses. But here's a little insider thing. There's a free course in there. If you download the app, in there waiting, no matter if you own anything with us yet or not, is the Building a Trellis Tunnel course that I put together. So you can download both of the apps. They're free. And inside the Learn app, even if you don't have any of our learning materials yet, you have one now, because you'll have the free one that's actually in there waiting for you. All right, so we have some question. All right, your best to go to soil layering. I'm sorry, I really do not y'all, I'm sorry, I'm having an allergy attack my ear. I'm sorry, if you want to post that again with a little bit more information, I did not understand that. How much cooler does shade cloth actually make the soil? Lovely mid-70s with ranunculus in the ground, ready to flower. So first off, you need to know that I don't grow ranunculus. So I can't comment on what they do or don't need. And shade cloth should tell you, if you've bought shade cloth that is shade cloth, it tells you how much of the light it actually blocks. So sorry, that's a question I would ask the people that you purchase the shade cloth from, which they come in all different levels. I don't know the word that they actually use. So can't help you on that. Hi, Lisa. Successfully grown delphinium and kohlrabi Iceland poppies. I'm trying not to overwater, and when I do water once a week with one tip. So let's see. I've successfully grown delphinium and Iceland poppies. I'm trying not to overwater. So you're talking about that they're inside still in blocks or in a tray or something. When I do water once a week with 1 tablespoon to harvest, Neptune's harvest, the leaves turn pale green or yellow. Yikes, what am I doing wrong? Oftentimes, in fact, I'm just working on a master class for my club about seed starting troubleshooting, and one of the things is, yellowing type seedlings and what could be the causes. I'm sorry, y'all, my ear is really itching. And oftentimes the number one thing, and I actually have some over there that I use for imaging, is a lot of times, how old are they? That's what I want to know, Little West 64. If they're more than 3 or 4 weeks old and they're yellowing, it is time to get them outside potentially. So overwatering, low light, and being just too old, they just need to be planted and have more breathing room and root room. And especially both of those that you're actually speaking of. That's one of the reasons that people don't do a lot of seed starting those indoors. They just are pretty, very needy, and that they have particular needs that they actually have. I hope that helps, but that would be my first thought. Started in December. Yeah, they definitely need to be gotten outside, I would say. I mean, anything over 4 weeks, you start getting into, troubled, and they're in blocks. Definitely, I would say you need to plant them for sure. Let's see. Hi, I planted my Chinese forget-me-nots in October. Will they return, or will I need to replant this spring? So if you sowed seeds, or if you planted transplants, which I've never done, we always direct sow them in the fall, they should have sprouted into a little transplant, a little seedling, right? From when you planted them, and that little plant overwinters through the winter. If you're saying you either never saw that or they died, replanting certainly would be, probably the need. However, it is, you don't say where you are. It's pretty difficult, if not impossible, to get seeds to germinate early enough in the season when it's still cold outside, because they need heat to germinate, to get them up and growing to actually perform before it gets too hot. It really depends on where you live. We don't do any direct sowing this time of the year, and that's all I've done with them. Maybe you've done something different, but I would say that is next season. You would plant them again this fall, figure out what you did wrong, make the timing right. Ours wintered over, and that's how we typically do that. If I pinch my snaps, can you plant the cuttings into soil blocks successfully? I've never tried in blocks with cuttings. So I've never rooted snapdragons. I see people talking about that. And so I don't have any experience with that. However, we do cuttings of other things into soil blocks, not typically the small block. And you would have to so you have to make a hole to be able to stick your stem in, right? So if you have something that makes a small enough hole to get your stem in the block, I would think that would be, if you want to do that, I would think that's what I would do. I'd use the small block, use a thin something to make a little hole so you can get your stem in with the rooting hormone on it and see what happens. But I've never rooted snap, so I don't have firsthand experience with that, but I have rooted other things in blocks and they do beautifully. So they came up and died back in November. They may, I will say that our Chinese forget-me-nots, which are pretty vigorous where I am, when we come out of winter, they're tiny. They're so small. They aren't the most vigorous overwintered plants that we have. You know, when I look at the row of all of our direct seeded stuff there at the head, they're like, oh, are they still there? And all the rest of them I can see at a distance. So maybe you still have something and you just can't see them. That helps. Do you recommend leaving lights on in the greenhouse for cool flowers past germination? I live in Michigan. So are you talking about for seed starting or growing? I can't comment. I don't do greenhouse growing as far as how much light to get plants to actually flower. But if you have your transplants out in a greenhouse, we just keep our plants under lights for 16 hours a day, okay? That's the optimal to get the most compact, healthiest growth. Those little guys need 16 hours a day. Well, of course, there's not 16 hours a day of light outside, especially this time of the year, right? So that would be a choice. There are certainly greenhouse growers that don't use light, supplemental light. I don't know how that affects the growth of the transplants as far as timing goes, but we like to grow with 16 hours of grow lights, and I would see nothing wrong with having a grow light on in your greenhouse for a few additional hours every day, perhaps. Basically, the only thing that I typically do cuttings of is Salvia leucanthia or Salvia mexicana, which I just did that with the club a couple of weeks ago. Those are just salvias you can't start from seed, so we have always just started from cuttings. Zone 7B, Middle Tennessee, my fall planted Rudbeckia looks rough. If it were later in the year, I would fertilize them, but I'm not sure I should do now. In addition, how do you keep Tucker out of your beds? My pups want to romp. So 2 really great questions. First off, Rudbeckia is very susceptible to slugs. And I know I've uncovered beds before and the slugs have set up housekeeping underneath there. And has just really ravaged and eaten the foliage to the ends. There was just nothing but nubs there. I will say that Rudbeckia is pretty hardy. Oftentimes in my situation, they have just regrown and come back, right? And so Rudbeckias, first off, and we do plant it again. We plant it in very early spring. We have seedlings ready to go out for our very early spring planting. Just to extend our bloom. So you can do that if you need to, for sure. But don't throw the towel in on it yet. And then once we uncover, the robins just have their way with that bed, right? Eating up slugs and different things. That hasn't happened in many years, but I remember a year that they really ravaged. And they looked terrible, but they all grew. So we had a great return on that. And so fertilizing, you don't really fertilize until it warms up, so you can fertilize, you're in 7B, so you're kind of close to me. As our afternoons start warming up and you see sprouting and growing starting to happen in your seedlings that are planted, that is when I would start I do a foliar feed, use either a hose sprayer or a watering can with a sprinkler head and just give them a little bubble bath and give them a bolt so they'll actually get started. As far as keeping Tucker off of our beds, the piece that most people miss, and I actually did a podcast back in the beginning. I did a podcast of dogs in the garden. My previous life was in the sport of dogs. Tucker is never loose when there is flat beds, meaning beds aren't grown up, without supervision. So point in case, when it's like this time of the year where there's nothing grown up, so all dogs see is a flat surface, right? And they'll just run right across your beds. They have no clue. They have nothing to base anything on. Tucker is never loose when I am working in that garden because he'll run right over to me. I have a big dog yard. We have a dog yard that's probably 1/8 of an acre where I can put him when we're working in the garden where it is susceptible to Tucker running through it. However, once the vegetation grows up and they can see it, that's when he learns to walk up and down the pathways. And oftentimes, he will always walk up and down the pathways, but I don't ever give him the opportunity to screw up when there's, like right now, when all those seedlings are out there. And in fact, it's funny you asked this. I have my 2 very early spring planting beds that were made last fall. Bio 360 on top. It's been sitting there empty all year. Before we got the deer fence up, probably like October, November, or December, Tucker walked right down the middle of both of those beds, and it just decimated the Bio 360. Right now, as we're speaking, Andrew is topping those beds with compost to help pin down the Bio 360 because Tucker's big footprints, then the wind gets in there and rips it, and it's just a mess. So it's not that my dog knows so much, it's that he has limited access. And when there's not flowers grown up where he can see where he's supposed to walk, I'm not working in the garden, which is an invitation for him to come in the garden. When there's no vegetation, that's when he is confined somewhere where he can see me. It's right next to the garden. So it's not that he just knows so all, it's just I don't ever give him that opportunity. And that makes for a very happy relationship, by the way. My Clarkia looks dead. It was looking beautiful before the cold. It was frost clothed, So Clarkia, Godicia, whatever you call it, I have been there with you. And we did not fall plant it this year for that very reason. Last year had a love-hate thing with it. We covered it and it still got whacked. So I have now, this will be I have 3 trays of Godicia in there ready to go to the garden during our planting time. Because what my experience has been, when we get them planted on time in very early spring, we still get enormous, beautiful stems. And they're kind of like straw flowers. Straw flowers maybe could winter over here, but it's just too iffy. I don't need that kind of stress, right? So we have just perfected very early spring planting. So you may, and you're a little colder than I am. So that may be what you need to do too, is to find out to have transplants ready at the very earliest date to get them in the ground for your very early spring planting window. And sometimes you can plant in the fall, but it's not necessary. It's like if you can get great ones planted in very early spring, why worry about the fall planted, right? Will it come back? Are their roots okay, or do I need to start over? So I think that was underneath the Godicia. Only time will tell that, it's just impossible to look at stuff this time of the year. Until spring hits and you get some heat for vegetative growth to start, you just will not know. So nobody can answer that for you. Can you explain how you use leaves in your garden? I have pretty heavy clay soil that doesn't drain great in the winter. I'm wondering if tilling leaves in would help. First off, I would never till leaves into my garden. You never incorporate into your soil any unfinished product. What that means is the stuff that goes into compost, you would never till them into the garden until the compost was finished and complete. Leaf mold is wonderful. That's leaves that have basically composted and it's nothing but leaves. And that is wonderful to incorporate to your soil, but straight leaves, so if you can imagine, if you put in, or even bark, shredded bark will do the very same thing as leaves will. When you put whole product into your soil that's not digested, your soil has to focus all of its attention to digesting that, taking even more away from your plants. So we just never put any unfinished anything into our soil. The only thing that gets incorporated is finished compost, finished leaf mold, that type of thing. We use leaves purely as mulch. And so when we put leaves down in our fall planted pathways, so like they are right now, they're leafed out there, it's just leaves, they aren't mulch, chopped up or anything. Once we start working in that garden, it starts off with us netting, and we're walking up and down the pathways all the time, harvesting constantly, that just pulverizes those leaves. So when that garden ultimately ends, we do, in our conventional area, tear down, use a tractor and bush hog and till that entire garden. Biodegradable film, the pathways with the leaves, we remove the irrigation, any netting obviously, and stakes, but everything else is incorporated. But at that point, it is so pulverized, it's not the leaves like you're talking about. So we use leaves as mulch more than anything else. Hope that answers your question. Will it come back? Oh, that's the... Good morning, Lisa. I'm curious if you have grown or have any experience with Trellissius globe flower. I have not grown that. I am thinking that that's a perennial, maybe. We just basically don't, other than peonies, really don't grow perennials here. Biggest bang for your buck, y'all, is annuals. You just have to learn how to manage all that right. But so no, I can't help you on that. What can I sow? What can I sow this February and March? Some cool flowers that I can dry as well. Well, that all depends on when you're supposed to plant cool flowers. So that's something you have to figure out for yourself based on your first and last frost date and what your winter hardiness zone is. If it's too late for you to start stuff, which is we're kind of heading into that time. It's too late for us to start seeds today for a very early spring planting of cool flowers, which is 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. So then you have to realize if you're starting late and planting late, you're not going to benefit from the cool flower concept, which is well-established plants that'll grow taller and produce more because they got to get ready for the blooming season long before they were supposed to bloom. Planting late voids all of that. So you need to either read the Cool Flower book or the Cut Flower Handbook. Both of them will guide you on finding your planting windows, and then you can figure out from there. And so hope that helps. Having really poor germination at 10 days with Cherokee Sunset and Sahara Rudbeckia. Maya and Chimney and Prairie Sun did great. How long until you start over? Any other tips? Rudbeckias, bless their hearts. Sometimes they're tough. Cherokee Sunset has given me fits before too. So I usually, when I'm frustrated with a tray of them, will typically just set the tray over in the grow room on a shelf that necessarily doesn't have a grow light on. Usually with Rudbeckias, it's temperature related. And I don't know what treatment you may have given. We keep them all in the freezer and then pull them out and start them. And that helps to wake them up and realize, oh gosh, we're coming out of dormancy. And I started Sahara this year and didn't have any remarkable issue. I did not start Cherokee Sunset this year. So I can't comment on that, but I would just set that tray over in a cool spot with no light on it, no heat mat, give it a hit of water every now and then and see what happens, and I'd start over. I bet you'll find that you'll get good germination, especially on Sahara. We had great germination on that. So hope that helps. The Rudbeckia family is amazing to grow. My seeds are in a room that is about 55 degrees. Do you still recommend putting cool flowers seeds in the freezer for 2 weeks? Do you put all cool flower annuals, cool hardy annuals in the freezer? So none of the varieties that are recommended in or that are sold on our website are in Cool Flowers or in the Cut Flower Handbook require any kind of cold treatment. This enhances germination. And going from freezing or below freezing to being brought out and then putting them in warm, moist soil just helps them to sprout. Some seeds we see absolutely no difference in. Occasionally, there's a seed that we've had trouble with that all of a sudden that was the missing piece. So it's not required. So I don't think your cool room of 55 degrees is not really that same effect. That's keeping viable seeds if they're no moisture, no humidity, if you're storing them with the desiccant. But that is what the freezer is for. But what you have is great seed storing, but it doesn't necessarily do the very same thing as freezing them. You're having them in a very cold, then bringing them out and giving them some warmth. It just kind of shakes them up, right? All right, friends, let's see what we have here. All right, so looks like that's all the questions that we have. Thank you guys so much. And so we're in that time period where we're shifting gears, right? From starting cool season to start preparing for warm season. We still don't start warm season for several weeks with the exception of eucalyptus, which is already started. So we're switching gears around here because that means my grow room is really going to switch for the conditions that are in there as we get ready to head into warm. So I want to remind everybody, please join me for the live show on Friday. It's tool time. We'll have a lot of fun. We'll probably be doing some seed starting and showing off some of our seedlings. And remember that today is the last day. If you have a Valentine, when you order this set, if you comment shop, then go to books under my shop. This is the first offer. This set will actually come wrapped, gift wrapped, ready for you to sign your name and for you to be, give somebody a lifetime of gardening, right, friends? Great book. So what's in there is our seed collection, #1 customer favorite for over 15 years. It has my book, and it has the PDF download of all the flowers that we couldn't fit in the book, y'all. And so check it out. It's a great Valentine's Day gift. And tonight is up until midnight they have to ship them tomorrow to ensure that they get to you on time is what that's all about. So please check it out. Have give somebody that gift of love of gardening and, it's something they will never forget. So friends, until we meet almost again. Sorry, friends, I thought I saw another question come. Oh, I did see a new question. How long would I put them in the freezer? So we tend to here on the farm store cool flowers in the freezer. That's just where they live. But if you're trying to manage this, a couple weeks is what we have done in the past. Is just put them in the freezer for a couple of weeks, then bring them out and do whatever the instructions tell you to do on the seed packet. All right, friends, until we meet again, remember, give the Valentine the gift of gardening, of all those flowers. Friends, they'll love it. Till we meet again, club members, I'll see you at 2 o'clock in the sewing circle. Ciao.